Good morning. Good morning. How's everybody doing today? That's good. Everybody good? My name is Aaron. I'm so glad that you're here with us today. And we're in a series called Running with the Giants. And you just saw a trailer there for that. And we're in week 7. And we're talking about this guy named Jacob today. And as Jacob already told you, we're not talking about him. We're talking about a different guy named Jacob. And so if you're making halos and angels and all that stuff, keep working on it. Anybody got their halo already done? You're like super fast. A couple people. Oh, you got it right there. I see it. Working on them. So we're talking about this guy named Jacob. And we're talking about this through this whole series out of Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1. And we have some motions to this. If you know the motions, you can stand up and do them with us. I'm going to read through this verse, and it says this: Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let us strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up. And let us run with endurance the race God has set before us. And so this whole series is coming out of this verse and talking about how there's this group of people that are in the stands, they're in the crowd, they're already in heaven, and they're cheering us on. And they're saying, hey, as you run this race of life, we're up here and we're in heaven and we're cheering you on. And a lot of times, how many of you have somebody in your life that you wish that you could just go to them one more time and ask them for some wisdom? I wish I could go and ask this person one question. I wish I could ask them something. And maybe you lost somebody in your life and you say, I wish I could go ask them for some wisdom about how to handle this thing in my life. And really what we're doing through this series is looking at people who are in the stands now. They're in heaven now, and they're cheering us on. And we're saying, hey, what could we learn from their life? What are things that if they were with us today, they would say, hey, you need to know this. This is some wisdom I can give you. And so each week we've been talking about how there's different people, and as they come down out of the stands onto the track with us and they run a lap with us, they're going to give us some wisdom. They're going to give us some thoughts that help us to understand how do we run this race. So as we talk through this today, we're going to be looking at the life of Jacob. And I'm just curious, are any of you in here wrestling fans? You're fans of like WWE, or you're like a wrestling fan of any kind? Maybe you like UFC. Any UFC fans in here? MMA people? No, a couple. I see one or two people. You're like afraid to say you are because you're like, people are going to judge me if I say I'm a WWE fan. Okay, anybody? At least, are you a Nacho Libre fan? Like, come on, anybody in the room? All right, can we at least get that? Like, at least a Nacho Libre fan. Okay, so today, as we talk about this guy named Jacob, he was a wrestler. He wasn't a wrestler like Nacho Libre or like UFC guys, but he actually wrestled with, the Bible tells us, an angel, or it says a man in some versions, but a lot of people believe it was an angel of the Lord. Some people believe it was actually Jesus before Jesus came to earth, and there's a lot of debate on who it was, but he wrestled with, we're going to say for today's sake, he wrestled with an angel of God. And he wrestled with this person and this angel, and it was an interesting situation. And so I think a lot of us find ourselves like Jacob, and I'll explain why in a minute. But as he comes down onto the track with us today to kind of run a lap with us, I think he would give us some really, really good wisdom. You see, Jacob, he liked to control everything in his life. Anybody in the room, you're like, I can relate. I want to control everything that happens in my life. My hand is raised. And some of you are like, amen. That's the best thing you said the whole series. I like to have control of things. I like to be able to know like what's happening. I like to be able to set the course for the day. I like to be able to know what's happening in the week. This week we had a week that just seemed like a lot of things happened that I had no control over, and honestly it was just a little frustrating. And it's interesting because I was going to preach this message and I was like, God, you're hilarious, making me walk through some of the things that I'm going to talk about on Sunday. But we have this tendency to want to control everything. Jacob wanted to control things so bad that when he was born, he was a twin. I got any twins in the room? I know I got a couple in here. Twins in the room. They got some really cool shoes on too. They're up here. They're not paying attention to me at all. They're making their angels. That's fine. But he was a twin, and whenever he came out of the womb, it said the Bible actually tells us that he wanted to be the firstborn so bad that he grabbed his other twin by the ankle. Like how aggressive, how competitive. Any of you in the room, you're like, I think I'm that competitive. I would be fighting for that. Like grabbed the ankle of his twin, and he wanted to be the firstborn, and he wanted to be the firstborn so bad that later on in life, he actually tricks his firstborn brother into giving him his birthright. He was super competitive. And then when he got married, he wanted to marry this specific woman, and so Jacob is like, I want to marry her. And so he goes to her dad, and he's like, hey man, your daughter, she's good looking. I think I want to marry your daughter. And the dad says, okay, well, you're going to have to work for her. And he's like, all right, well, what do I got to do? And he said, you're going to work 7 years for me to be able to earn the right to marry my daughter. And so Jacob worked 7 years. Some of you in the room are like, please don't let my potential father-in-law ever get an idea like that. Don't do that, please. But he had to work 7 years. So he worked 7 years to be able to marry this girl. And then guess what? The dad actually gives him the other sister. And he's like, I didn't want that sister. She's not pretty. She's ugly. I don't want her. I want the other one. And he comes back, he says, well, if you want her, you got to work another 7 years. And so Jacob works 14 years to marry one girl. Some of you girls, you need to raise your standards in the room, okay? He works 14 years to marry this girl. Why? Because he wants to control the outcome. He wants to control his life. And I think a lot of us, we find ourselves in situations where we're like, I want to control my life. I want to control. And there's nothing wrong with that per se. But on multiple occasions, God actually tries to reach out to Jacob. He tries to get Jacob's attention. And Jacob, he kept trying to write his own script. He kept trying to control his own narrative and his own story. And maybe today you relate to that. You're like, man, I want to control my own life. But if there's anything that Jacob would tell us today, as he comes down, imagine him, he's trotting down out of the stands. You know, he's coming down onto the track. He walks out on the track. You're in like lap 7 now of your 2 miles, and he puts his arm around you, and he's running beside you, and he's just giving you some encouragement. And he would say this to us today. He would say, this is a big idea if you're taking notes. He would say, hey, let God have control of your life. He would say, hey, let God have control of your life. He would say, I know you want to control everything. I know you want to do it your way. I know that you think you know what's best for you, but trust me, God knows way better than you what's best for you. I know you think that you have the right decision. I know you think that you're smarter than God sometimes. I know that you think that you know all the things, but just trust me, God sees the bigger picture. He understands your life way better than you could ever understand it. Just trust me. And Jacob would say, hey, go ahead now. Let God have control of your life. You see, I have a lot of Jacob tendencies. A lot of Jacob tendencies. I like to have control. And a lot of times even I think I know best. Anybody in the room, you think you know best? Just raise your hand. Come on, be honest. Don't be lying. Like you think it. Like you think I know best. And we try to control the variables. And maybe you're guilty of this, but a lot of times when it comes to Christianity and it comes to following God, we say, man, I want to be a Christian and I want the benefits of Christianity, but I want to keep control of certain areas of my life. Like, I want the benefits of following Jesus. I want the benefits of going to heaven one day. Like, I want fire insurance on my life. I don't want to end up in hell. I want to end up in heaven one day. So I want the benefits of that. But, God, I don't really know that I want to let you have, like my relationships. God, no, I can handle those. God, I don't really want you to mess. God, please don't touch my bank account. God, I got that under control. You don't need to touch that. God, I don't need you to tell me what you think my calling in life should be. I really like doing this thing, this job that I really enjoy. I don't need you to mess with that, God. I like controlling those things. And Jacob would say, hey, let God have control of your life. Because if you're maintaining control of your life, you're going to find yourself in a crisis. Jacob found himself in a crisis multiple times. But a lot of times we find ourselves in a crisis, and God doesn't always create the crisis, but he allows crisis. And why does God allow crisis to happen in our life? We're in a pretty global crisis right now. Why does he allow that to happen? Why does he allow individual crisis to happen in our lives? Well, a lot of times it's just for him to be able to say, hey, will you let me have control? I know you think you're strong enough. I know you think you know best. I know you think these things, but God's going, hey, in this season, if you would just turn to me, if you would just talk to me, if you would just give me control, if you would let me steer this ship, if you would let me steer your life, I promise you, I know and want best for you. Mother Teresa said this one time. She said, you'll never know God is all you need until he is all you have. You'll never know he's all you need until he's all you have. And I think in this season, some of us have found ourselves in a season where we're going, God, I don't know how to do anything that is going on. I don't know how to manage this. I don't know how to do this. I don't know what's going to happen when we go back to school next week. I don't know what's going to happen when I have to go teach next week. I don't know what's going to happen next month. I don't know what's going to happen in November. I don't know what's going to happen with college football. I mean, let's just be real. Like, God, what are you doing? God, if you've ever looked down on earth and thought, I'll show some mercy, this would be a moment, God. You could just give us some college football, okay? Like, we just don't know. And there's this moment, and Mother Teresa, I think she understood it very well. She said, you're never going to know that God's all you need until he's all you have. And when everything gets stripped away, just think about this for a second. When everything gets stripped away and it's just you and God, you realize, wow, he is the only thing I have. And even if everything comes back, he's actually all I need. With football or without football, God's all I need. With the job or without the job, he's all I need. With the relationship or without the relationship, God is all I need. And Jacob, he would say, man, let God have control. So I want to give you 3 thoughts today, if you'll let God have control of your life. And I notice a lot of times that as Christians and as people who go to church and things, a lot of times and I've said this a lot in this series, we believe in God, but we don't trust God. We believe in him, but we don't trust him. And so let me give you 3 thoughts. If you let God have control of your life, 3 things that will change in your life. Number 1 is he'll give you a new strength. He'll give you a new strength. How many of you guys in this season, you're like, I'm tired. Like, I just need some energy. I just need some strength. I just need something. Like give me something. I'm willing to take just about anything now, God. Like, if we will give God control of our lives, he gives us a new strength. This story with Jacob wrestling with God in Genesis 32, verse 24, it says this. This left Jacob all alone in the camp, and a man came and wrestled with him until the dawn began to break. Depending on the translation that you're reading, the word man is translated a lot of different ways. Most people believe it was an angel of God or Jesus before Jesus came to earth. And he wrestled with him until the dawn began to break. And so Jacob is literally wrestling. Remember how competitive he is? He's grabbing his twin's ankle. He's working for his wife. He's like wanting to win. He's trying to control everything. And he's literally wrestling with God. Just think about that for a second. How many of you guys, you found yourself in a season where you're like literally wrestling with God, going, God, why? God, are you sure, God? Really, God? You want me to do that, God? God, I don't know if you know this or not. Like, God doesn't know. And we wrestle back and forth with God. And he's wrestling with him. And this is really a lot of us right now. We're wrestling going, God, are you sure? God, God, trust me. She's the one. God, trust me. He's the one. God, trust me. I know that I'm supposed to stay in this friendship. God, trust me. God, I know this. God, trust me. And God's going, hey, would you stop wrestling with me and just listen to me for a second? But Jacob, like many of us, he wasn't going to give in. He was like, no, I know best. I know. And he wanted control. And so this is what happens in verse 25. It says, when the man saw, or the angel saw, that he would not win the match, he touched Jacob's hip. He touched him right here. And he wrenched it out of its socket. I don't know if you've ever seen somebody with their hip out of socket. It is one of the most painful things I've ever seen in my life. I was coaching high school girls basketball one time. And my wife almost fainted just now. She hates stories like this. And I was coaching high school girls basketball, and there was a girl. She was playing point guard. She came across the half-court line, and this girl went for the ball. And when she did, she threw her hip into her. And when she threw her hip into her, her entire hip came completely out of socket. And she was laying flat on the ground, but then you could see one half of her body was like elevated above the other half of her body because her entire hip was completely out of the socket. It was the grossest thing ever. And no one could help her. It was terrible. It was really bad. But in this moment, that's what happens to Jacob. The angel literally touches his hip and he wrenches it out of socket. Some of you are like, that's disgusting, Aaron. Why don't you tell us that story? It's in the Bible. He wrenches it out of its socket. And sometimes when God allows things to happen in our lives, things that cause us pain, things that make us go, why? Things that make us argue with God, things that make us question everything, God's really just saying, hey, you're not as strong as you think you are. Just remember, I still have control. Just remember, sometimes I'm going to let you feel very weak, and I'm going to let you feel a lot of pain because I need you to realize you are fully reliant on me. And I don't like that at all, honestly. I'm like, God, really? Like, I know I'm stubborn, God, but like, you don't have to allow pain in my life to get my attention. And I think a lot of times God's like, yeah, I do. I try getting your attention a million other ways. God tried to get Jacob's attention over and over and over again. And it wasn't until this moment that he really got his attention. You see, any of you in here, you would say, man, I'm a pretty independent person. I'm a pretty self-reliant person. And you pride yourself in that. Let me say, this is how you know if you're self-reliant. This is how you know how independent you are and how self-reliant you are. If you're truly self-reliant, you're exhausted right now. Some of you are like, light bulb, keep talking, Aaron. If you're truly self-reliant, you're exhausted right now. I know that because I'm a pretty self-reliant person. And in this season, as I walk through this season, I've just been like trekking through it, working through it, figuring it out. I realize, man, I'm so exhausted. I'm so tired a lot of times. And why is that? It's because I find myself not relying on God, but relying on Aaron. And going, Aaron can do this. Aaron can do all this. Aaron's got this. Aaron can make this happen. He can make this happen. He can make this happen. And at the end of the day, you just get home and you're like, man, how do I still have things on the to-do list? Anybody to-do list people? And you're like, how do I end the day every day with more things on the to-do list than I started with? And you're just so like frustrated with that. And it's because you're self-reliant and you're exhausting yourself. And I'm talking to me in that. Matthew 11, verse 28, this is Jesus talking. It says, Jesus said, come to me, all of you who are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. How many of you guys need rest today? He says, take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. I want to give you a thought. This is not my thought. I stole it from another pastor. I never even heard this taught, and he was teaching it, and I thought that is so good. This word yoke. A yoke is a big wooden thing they put on two oxen or two cattle, and it makes them work together and go straight, right? Well, this word, there's two different versions of this word in the original language, and one of the words means yoke, and it's like the generic Walmart version of the yoke, like Sam's Choice, or like Shasta Cola, like the bag cereal that like kind of tastes like the cereal, but it's not really the cereal. You know what I'm talking about? Like anybody, like you don't, yeah, Some of you are like, yeah, my mom buys that for me. It's kind of like the generic version of a yoke. So you buy this yoke and you put it on this oxen, and it fits, it does the job, but it doesn't really fit. It's kind of like having a pair of shoulder pads, but they're not really like custom fit to you, or they're not really the right size. Like they do the job, but at the end of practice, you're like all cut up and you got your neck's all messed up and all kinds of things from getting they just don't fit right. That's the generic version of the yoke. But then there's this other version of a yoke, and it's the custom fit version of the yoke. It's the yoke that the master cared enough about his oxen and about the job getting done that he went down to the local woodsmith guy. Woodsmith? That's not even a thing. Woodworker guy. I was thinking blacksmith. I don't know. Woodworker guy. I was making sure you were awake. It's the local woodworker guy, and he would say, hey, I want you to build a custom yoke for my ox. And he would measure out the ox, and he would get in this special design thing that was custom fit for him. 100%. It was fit for him. And what Jesus is telling us, he's saying, hey, you've been wearing the one-size-fits-all yoke for way too long, and it's worn you out, and it's destroyed you, and it's really hurt you. And he's saying, hey, if you will come to me, if you'll let me have control of your life, I'll give you the custom fit, the kind that is going to fit you perfectly. And whenever you work, it's not going to wear you out because you're doing the work that I've asked you to do, not just the work that you're doing. He's not saying, hey, I want you to go and lay down. He's saying, hey, I want you to keep working, but let me just give you a different tool to work with, a tool that won't wear you out. And I want to give you this custom fit yoke. Chris Hodges says it this way. He says, rest is not inactivity. Rest is a condition of your soul. Rest is not inactivity. It's a condition of our souls. You see, you can live under your own power, or you can live under the power of the Holy Spirit. The only difference is who has control. And when we have control, honestly, we wear ourselves out because we're wearing the wrong yoke. The second thing today, if you let God have control of your life, is this. You'll get a new identity. You'll get a new identity. In Genesis 32, verse 27, back to Jacob, he's wrestling. And at the end of him wrestling, he just got his hip all jacked up. He's messed up now. And it says this, what is your name, the man asked. The angel asked Jacob, he says, hey, what is your name? He knew his name, but he said, what is your name? And he replied, Jacob. And he says to him, the angel says, your name will no longer be Jacob. The man told him, from now on you will be called Israel because you have fought with God, with men, and have won. You see, God will always make us come face to face with the identity that we've created for ourselves. He will always make us come face to face with the identity that we've created for ourselves. You and I, we create identities for ourselves. And they're built around our own ideals and our own thoughts and our own things that we think will make us happy. And we build these identities, and God will always make us come face to face with that identity. At some point in time in our life, normally multiple times, he's going to make us come face to face with those identities. And God's going to ask us a question. He's going to say, hey, what's your name? And we're going to tell him, my name is whatever our job title is, whatever our accomplishments are, whatever the stuff that we're passionate about is. And God's going to look at us, and he's going to say either one thing of that is who you are, or he's going to look at us and he's going to say, no, that's the thing that you built for yourself. And he's going to respond the way that this guy responds to Jacob. And he says, no, from now on, your name's going to be Israel. You see, God's going to make us come face to face. He's going to shift our identity. When we let him have control, he shifts our identity. He does it all throughout the whole New Testament. We see Jesus meet with person after person where he says, hey, no, your name is not this. Your name is this. He does it with Peter. He says, Peter, your name's no longer going to be, I can't remember his name, but now it's going to be Peter, and it's going to be, your name literally means rock, and he changes his name. Changes his name in that moment. He shifts his name. Why? Because he's going, hey, I see you for who you can be, not just for who you are. And I think a lot of times whenever we're living our own lives and we're doing it our way, God's going, hey, I have a better way. I have a new identity for you. And it doesn't have to look like what the identity you've built for yourself or everybody's put on you, but it can look totally different. I have a custom yoke for you. I have a custom life built for you, but you got to let me have control. You can't do it your own way. All throughout Scripture, we see this happen. all throughout Scripture. The third thing that you get if you let God have control of your life is you'll get a new joy. You'll get a new joy. Some of us, and myself included in this season, we need this so bad. We need a new joy. See, joy is not circumstantial. Happiness is circumstantial. Happiness is related to circumstance, but joy is regardless of circumstance. Happiness is about what's happening around us, but joy is not external, it's actually internal. Joy is going, hey, I've let God have control, so no matter what happens around me, I know he's still in control, and I still am going to have joy. Happiness is when a certain person gets elected, or a certain football season gets canceled, or a certain job shifts, or a certain relationship ends. When that happens, my world is just broken and crumbled, and everything is messed up. Joy is regardless of if football happens, regardless of if school stays or doesn't stay, regardless of this relationship ends or doesn't end, I'm still going to have a joy that's found in letting God have control of my life. Genesis 32:29, Jacob is talking with this angel again. He says, please tell me your name. Jacob's asking him now, hey, please tell me your name. He says, why do you want to know my name? The man replied. Then he blessed Jacob there. Joy is about being blessed. And let me just kind of debunk a thought on blessing. In America, we think blessing is like, they have a lot of money, they have a lot of stuff, they're blessed. They have a nice house, they're blessed. I even hear people sometimes, and this makes me like want to gag, when they're like, I got a front row parking spot at Walmart, I'm just blessed. I'm like, I want to slap you right now. If you've ever said that to me, I'm sorry. But I'm just like, that's not what it means at all. That's not what that means. Being blessed, if you look in Matthew chapter 5 at the Beatitudes, he says, like, blessed are the poor in spirit. Like, what? Blessed are the poor in spirit. He gives all these things, like, blessed are these things, and they're all kind of like negative. Some of them are like negative things. And you're like, what in the world does that mean? Being blessed, when he blessed Jacob, blessed doesn't mean a lot of money. It doesn't mean a lot of things. It doesn't mean front row parking. It literally means an internal joy that regardless of the external circumstances, you're still going to have joy. It means that you've let God have control of your life, and so that even if things happen that you can't control, you're still going to have joy. Even if everything falls apart around you, you still have joy. That's what being blessed means. It isn't about something you get or something that someone gives you or something that you acquire in life. It's about having an internal joy that goes, you know what, no matter what happens, I trust and I have faith in who God is in my life. And I know he has it in control. So a couple final thoughts here from Jacob before we close out. Two final thoughts. Number one is this: brokenness precedes breakthrough. Brokenness precedes breakthrough. You see, God doesn't expect perfection. I know it seems like a lot of churches kind of preach that. God doesn't expect you to be perfect. He just expects you to be honest. God expects people to be honest with him. And what he wants us to be honest with him is to come to him and say, God, I have nothing unless I have you. God, I can't do this by myself. God, I want to let you have here. You can have control of my life. I've really messed it up. I really don't know what I'm doing. Or I've been really prideful and I thought I knew what I was doing, but God, I know that you know best. He wants honesty. He doesn't want perfection. And so brokenness precedes breakthrough. In Psalms 51, verse 17, it says this: the sacrifice you desire is a broken spirit. You will not reject a broken and repentant heart, O God. See, God's looking for people who their hearts are broken. Their hearts are humble. Their hearts are going, hey, I don't have it all together. Hey, I don't understand how to navigate this season of life. God, I don't know what decision to make in this. God, will you take control? I'll give you control. I humble myself and I give you control. 1 Peter 5:5 says, God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble. Let me say, anytime that the word opposes and God are next to each other, you should really pay attention, because there's nothing that I never want to be opposed by God. That's one battle, one game you're never going to win. It says God opposes the proud, but he gives grace. Some versions say he gives favor to the humble. One thing I've learned about following God and about doing life is that one way or another, you're going to be humbled. But it's a lot better if you'll humble yourself. I'm going to say that one more time. One way or another, you're going to be humbled. But it's a lot better if you'll just humble yourself. When God has to oppose us, to humble us, it does not feel good. It does not end well. It ends the way he wants it, but it doesn't feel good for any of us. But when we humble ourselves and we come to God and we say, God, I need you. I can't do this by myself. I need you. When we humble ourselves and we come to that point, God goes, hey, come here. I love you. And he puts his arms around us and he goes, let me walk with you. Let me show you. Let me guide you. Let me direct you. Let me lead you into the relationships that you should be in. Let me lead you into the career that I want you to be in. Let me give you this custom fit yoke so you stop wearing yourself out. Let me help you with this. But when we just continue responding with pride, God eventually goes, okay, I have to let things happen in your life to humble you. And those are never fun. They're never fun. Brokenness always precedes breakthrough. I'm going to ask the band to come back up with me as I give you this last one. You must lose yourself in order to find yourself. Jacob's got his arm around us. He's going, hey, I got to go now, but you must lose yourself in order to find yourself. Mark 8:34 in the Message. This is Jesus talking. He says this. He says, calling the crowd to join his disciples, he said, anyone who intends to come with me has to let me lead. This is the gospel right here. This is what it means to follow after Jesus. It all starts with you saying, you can lead. I've led long enough. Anybody ever dance with somebody and both of you are trying to lead? Jessica and I are some of the strongest personalities that you've ever experienced in your life. And when we're both pretty strong personalities, and whenever we try to do something that requires us to give up leadership to one of the other one, sometimes it's really messy. We'll use that word. That's a good word. True? Yeah? So just think about a dance where both people are trying to lead. It doesn't look good. You're like, what are those people doing? They look so dumb. It just doesn't make sense. You're like, dude, one of you lead. The other one needs to follow. But when you're both leading, you're like, God, that looks so terrible. Have they ever danced before? And I think people look at our lives a lot of times and we have this wrestling match with God. And we're like, I'm going to lead. And God's like, would you let me lead? And you're like, no, I'm leading. And God's like, would you let me lead? And you're like, no, I'm leading, God. I got this. And he's like, okay, you got this. I'm not following you because you're going to run off cliff, but whatever. And he lets us do a lot of things. But when we let him lead, our life looks so different. Our life looks so different to people around us. It looks so different to us, even individually. When we go, hey, God, I'll let you lead. Then he says this. He says, you're not in the driver's seat. I am. Don't run from suffering. Embrace it. And I don't like that. He says, follow me and I'll show you how. Self-help is no help at all. Some of us need to learn that today. Self-help is no help at all. Self-sacrifice is the way, my way, to saving yourself, your true self. What good would it get? What good would it do to get everything you want and lose you, the real you? What would you ever trade your soul for? The writer, Jesus is telling us, he's saying, hey, following me means you letting go of control and letting me lead. And I'm just be really honest and candid with you. In American Christianity, we're really, really good at believing in God. We're really terrible at letting him lead our lives. Because we have the money and the careers and the entertainment and the things that we want. And so we're like, God, I think I've done a pretty good job building my life. And God's going, you can either humble yourself and tell me that you relied on me, or I will allow you to be humbled. But either way, you're going to be humbled. And it might be in this life, it might be in heaven, but humbling is going to happen. And Jacob would just say, hey, I wrestled with God for a long time. I fought with him for a long time. And Jacob can literally say, God broke my hip. And that's what it took for him to get my attention and for me to actually go, okay, God, you can have control. And so today, what would it look like for you to give God control of your life? What areas have you been holding on to that you're like, man, God, I believe in you, but I don't trust you with this. I want control of this. I want this. So we have a slide up on the screen that I want you to fill in the blank today. Maybe you need to type this into your phone. Maybe you need to send a text to somebody so you remember this. Maybe you need to write it down, whatever you need to do. But God, I will give you control of my, what is it? Is it, God, I'll give you control of my attitude? God, I'll give you control of my finances. God, I will give you control of this habit that I know is destructive. God, I will give you control of my relationships. God, I will give you control of my career path. God, I will give you control of what is it for you that you're like, I haven't really given God control of this because I feel like I do it better. And you just need to admit, I don't do it better. Like, you didn't have that moment where you just go, you know what, God, I thought that I could do this better than you. I have to do that on a regular basis, by the way. I have to come to God and go, God, I thought I could do this better than you, and I didn't even involve you in the process, and I'm sorry. And I just had to humble myself and say, God, I'm sorry. Would you help me? I know you know better than me anyway. I should have started there. But the pride and the self-reliance, now that I'm worn out, I'm like, God, would you please help? And God's going, why don't you just start there? Why don't you just start with going, hey, God, I need you in this one. I don't know what to do. I don't know what decision to make. I don't know how to raise these kids. I don't know how to navigate this school year. I don't know how to do this, God. I think I know how. Like, if maybe you're like, I think I know how, God, but God, it would be better, even if I think I know best, it would be better for me to hear from you. Would you help me? And just ask him, God, will you help me? So what does it say? You're like, God, I will give you control of and maybe you're here today and you're like, I need to give God control of my life. I'm asking you to bow your heads with me for a moment. Maybe that's you. You're like, I don't just need to give God control of one area, but I need to give him control of my entire life. And if that's you today, I'm just going to ask you in a really candid moment between me, you, and God, everybody else's heads bowed. If that's you, you say, man, I want to give God control of my life today. I'm just going to ask you to raise your hand. If you've never done that before, awesome. Anybody else in the room? You're like, man, I want to give God control of my life. If that's you today, you say, man, I just need to give him control of my life. It starts with you humbling yourself in this moment and just saying, God, I need you. I need you. I can't do this by myself. I'm not good enough. I need you. I need you not just to be added to my life. I need to give you control of my life. And for you to just, maybe you just need to, in a symbolic way, maybe you just need to open your hands and go, I'm letting go of control. I'm letting go. And if it's not your whole life, what is it today? What's that one thing, that one area where you're like, man, I know I got to give God control of this? What is that for you? That area that you're like, man, I've been holding on to this forever. I've been fighting to do this my way, and I've been wrestling with God maybe for decades, maybe for months, maybe for weeks. You've been wrestling with God and going, no, I know this is what I should do. I know this is how I should do it. And God's going, I have a custom fit yoke for you. I have a custom fit life for you if you would let me lead it. Don't just believe in me, let me lead it. Don't just believe in me, trust me. Don't just believe in me, let me lead. What is that for you? As I pray, I just want you to just let that go to God today and just say, God, I give you this. I'm letting it go. You can have it. You can lead it. Lord, we love you and we thank you. God, we all have things in our lives that we try to hold on to, we try to control. And I just pray that today as we talk about the life of Jacob and how he wrestled with you, and how you had to finally just get his attention and say, look, you're not as strong as you think you are. I pray that, God, this morning that we would humble ourselves willingly. We would release the things that we've been controlling, that we've been trying to control, and we would turn them over to you, and we would say, God, this is yours. God, you're a way better leader in my life than I am anyway. Here it is. Here's my life. I give it to you as a sacrifice. You can do what you want with it. I'll trust you with it. I'll trust you with every area of it. I'll trust you with my finances. I'll trust you with my family. I'll trust you with my career. I'll trust you with my relationships. I'll trust you with everything that I have. I give you full control, God. I make you Lord of my life today. I make you Lord of every area of it. God, you can say or do anything that you want to do. And God, I will trust you. We love you and we thank you today. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Before you guys leave today, we're going to sing one more song.
Thank you for joining Byers Assembly for Church online today. But don't stop here. Be sure to finish a Connect card by texting the word shirt to 97000. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel and like our Facebook page so you don't miss a single video or a live stream. And be sure to share this with a friend. Thank you for watching and supporting this ministry as we help people know Jesus, grow together, and invest in others.